All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
One of the all-time most popular noirs, Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard, is a haunting Hollywood nightmare, narrated by a dead man, William Holden's down-and-out screenwriter, Joe Gillis.
All right, Gillis, you've got 5 minutes. What's your story about?
Sunset Boulevard was described by film writer Richard Corliss as, quote, the definitive Hollywood horror movie.
If you need any help with the coffin, call me.
But the classic is more than a cynical takedown of Hollywood. Looking inward at the movie-making process, the 1950 noir warned that making a quality picture should be about devotion to good stories.
To begin with, I think you should throw out all that psychological mess, exploring a killer's sick mind.
Psychopaths sell like hotcakes.
Not the pursuit of vanity or past glory. Sunset Boulevard indicted the studio system's mistreatment of the writer.
Don't you know the finest things in the world have been written on an empty stomach?
And its toxic star machine, based on an endless cycle of celebrity worship and obsession with youth.
Norma Desmond is coming in to see you, Mr. DeMille.
Norma Desmond?
She must be 1,000,000 years old.
These targets reveal a lot about film history, and they also make Wilder's cautionary tale feel all too relevant to our movie-making business today. The dark side of Hollywood's star system is embodied in washed-up silent film star Norma Desmond, played by the real silent film star Gloria Swanson. Norma's vanity is so overgrown it's left reality behind.
She was still sleepwalking along the giddy heights of a lost career. Plain crazy when it came to that one subject, her celluloid self.
She lives in the past, watching her own old movies, undergoing rigorous procedures for her comeback that will never come.
We had faces.
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
The star system emphasizes, above everything, image. And Norma is exactly just an image. She is all faces and being big, an image with nothing behind it. We come to pity Norma and her delusions as casualties of a mean business.
All I ask is for you to be a little patient and a little kind.
The studios made her into a monster.
And she was a terror to work with.
Only toward the end. You know, a dozen press agents working overtime can do terrible things to the human spirit.
And then traded her in for the next star to promote and exploit.
Miss Desmond! It's me! It's Hawkeye!
Hello, Hawkeye.
An object for the public to worship.
Let's get a good look at you!
Desmond, what Desmond?
Norma Desmond.
Why, I thought she was dead.
And then forget.
Haga, turn that light back where it belongs.
Our fluctuating feelings toward Norma provide a subtle commentary on Hollywood's and our own attitude toward older women.
But the point is, I never looked better in my life.
Norma's a prime example of the monstrous older woman trope, who's presented as ghastly for refusal to accept her age. Yet why would anyone want to act like an old woman when they're just expected to quietly disappear? In historical context, Norma is the symbol of a whole era of silent film stars who had been ungraciously cast aside. Swanson was herself a product of the silent era system. Wilder approached a number of former stars about the role, including reclusive Mary Pickford, who was reportedly horrified by the idea of playing Norma. Wilder also considered people like Mae West, Pola Negri, whose Polish accent was too strong, Norma Shearer, and Greta Garbo. Director George Cukor recommended Swanson, who was aghast when she was asked to do a screen test. Swanson was arguably the star of Paramount in those days. So when Norma says,
Tell him without me, he wouldn't have any job, because without me, there wouldn't be any Paramount studio.
You're right, Miss Desmond.
Swanson herself might not be exaggerating to say the same. Yet her fortunes declined as she aged and the sound era kicked in.
There was a time in this business when they had the eyes of the whole wide world. But that wasn't good enough for them. Oh, no. They had to have the ears of the world, too. So they opened their big mouths, and out came talk. Talk, talk!
Until her triumphant return in Sunset Boulevard landed the actress her first Academy Award nomination in 21 years. The film also features silent film director Erich von Stroheim as Norma's stuck-in-time butler, Max.
I discovered her when she was 16.
I made her a star. I directed all her early films.
Who's revealed to be Norma's first husband and former director. Iconic director Cecil B. DeMille plays himself, while silent film stars H.B. Warner, Buster Keaton, and Anna Q. Nielsen all make cameos as Norma's Waxworks bridge partners. Wilder and producer Charles Brackett tried to keep Paramount in the dark about the full extent of the movie's digs at Hollywood and avoid excessive censorship by the Breen office by submitting the script only a few pages at a time for review. The story goes that they told Paramount they were adapting a story titled A Can of Beans, which didn't exist. Legendary producer Louis B. Mayer of MGM slammed Wilder. "You befouled your own nest." Silent era star Mae Murray reportedly said, "None of us floozies was that nuts." With his reflective monologues and sarcastic retorts, the weathered Gillis presents a grim picture of the screenwriter's life as a cog in the movie machine.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gillis, but I just didn't think it was any good. I found it flat and trite.
Exactly what kind of material do you recommend? James Joyce? Dostoevsky?
He questions Hollywood's impossible demands for medium originality. It rejects formulaic stories, yet won't accept truly creative ones either.
Maybe they weren't original enough. Maybe they were too original. All I know is they didn't sell.
The writer's uncertain prospects, despite hard work.
I'd always heard that you had some talent.
That was last year. This year I'm trying to earn a living.
The likelihood of executive meddling in the creative process.
Last one I wrote was about Okies in the Dust Bowl. You'd never know because when it reached the screen, the whole thing played on a torpedo boat.
The risk of plagiarism by other writers.
Never let another writer read your material. He may steal it.
And the general lack of acknowledgement and respect for the writer's contribution.
Audiences don't know somebody sits down and writes a picture. They think the actors make it up as they go along.
All of these might have been Wilder's own concerns. After all, as an accomplished screenwriter, he wrote the story of a writer and likely made Gillis a vessel of his frustrations. It was exactly such fear and actual personal experience that made him take up directing himself. During the filming of Ball of Fire, a film Wilder wrote, director Howard Hawks became his mentor. Wilder's story concerns another writer, 22-year-old script reading and aspiring screenwriter Betty Schaefer, played by Nancy Olson.
I've got 20 pages of notes, and I've got a pretty good character for the man.
In stark contrast with the cynical Joe, Betty is a passionate newcomer.
I don't want to be a reader all my life. I want to write.
Betty is the foil to delusional Norma. She is level-headed, grounded in reality, and flexible. She grew up in a showbiz family and once dreamed of being a star.
Well, they didn't like my nose. Slanted this way a little. So I went to a doctor and had it fixed. They made more tests and they were crazy about my nose. Only they didn't like my acting.
But when she failed, she moved on and found her right place behind the camera. This revelation of Betty's previous dream is a crucial counterpoint to Norma, who can't face bad news or hear the answer no. Betty represents the virtue of adaptability. Betty proves that if you like movies, you can find a way to be part of them, as long as you work hard and admit your strengths and weaknesses.
Couldn't we work in the evenings?
Meanwhile, Betty pesters Joe to work hard at some really good writing.
I just think that pictures should say a little something.
Oh, one of the message kids. Just a story won't do. You'd have turned down Gone with the Wind.
No, that was me. I said, who wants to see a Civil War picture?
Joe's hinting that Betty's high-minded outlook is no more a phase that all writers go through, and she will end up jaded and defeated like him. But he begins to admire her passion, straightforwardness, and eye for a good story. Her pestering makes him a better writer and a self-respecting individual.
Don't you sometimes hate yourself?
Constantly. No, in all seriousness, this is really good. It's fun writing with you.
If Wilder was projecting his cynical experiences onto Joe, Betty represented his inner idealist. The collaborative experience between Joe and Betty mirrors Wilder's process working on the script of Double Indemnity 6 years before with Raymond Chandler, then also an impassioned newcomer to Hollywood. Gillis's deal with Norma to become a kept man and work on a terrible script is triggered by his creative drought and need for money. Yet his meeting Betty symbolizes that he still has the ability to create original material. He dies because he has already entangled himself too deeply in the Norma version of Hollywood, in which one sells his soul and dignity to what he doesn't love or believe in. Doom and gloom is announced from the start by the format itself. We're given a story narrated by a dead man. This choice tells us what to expect. Hollywood is not a fertile place for artists. It will eat you up and spit you out. Yet a naive part of us still hopes, despite knowing the ending, that Betty and Joe can somehow transcend this world.
Suddenly I find myself terribly afraid of losing you.
You won't. I'll get us a refill of this horrible liquid
You'll be waiting for me.
with a wildly beating heart.
Life can be beautiful.
One of the movie's messages is that trying to hold on to the past and freeze things the way they were is fatal delusion. Just like trying to act like a fresh-faced youth when you're a middle-aged woman.
Norma, you're a woman of 50. Now grow up. There's nothing tragic about being 50. Not unless you try to be 25.
Above all, Sunset Boulevard advocates the will to confront reality and tell it like it is. Good storytelling and artistic creation hinges on viewing reality and ourselves with honesty. This also means reconfronting our changing realities and selves as time goes by. The world of film moves on, and movies are never really about any one person or star. Every person working on the movie is a tool or contributor to the storytelling, even the glamorous star. Wilder hints at the glory of what people do that's never really seen by the audience. This anonymous contribution has the potential to become great art if you're driven by the love of movies rather than glory. The movie's final shot of Norma looking into camera is one of the iconic moments in film history. The image underlines the dangerous appeal of intoxicating stardom and addiction to the public's loving gaze. Yet this final sequence gives us contradicting emotions. It represents Norma's full descent into her insanity, yet it's also a fabulous transfixing performance by Swanson that led the entire crew to applaud and Swanson herself to burst into tears after they wrap. So while for the character it represents that rejection of reality, within the film it represents a brilliant piece of acting.
I'm ready.
The heights film can reach when people give generously to their art. Like most noir, Sunset Boulevard starts by presenting a casually cynical view of its subject, only to reveal by the end that despite its hard exterior, it holds dearly to a few key ideals. In the end, Sunset Boulevard is a love letter to the joy of making a really fine movie.
I can't go on with this scene. I'm too happy.